So, Rudy, a tough night, of course, if you're a conservative. First of all, losing all three, finding out you're now looking at a majority government, and has been pointed out, the fact that, not only do you lose, but in those two Ontario ridings, never mind Terrebonne, turning even lower votes in terms of votes than in the previous election. So, first of all, your reaction to that?
It's a love affair that is continuing, or a honeymoon between Canadians and also Quebecers when it comes to the relationship with Mark Carney. It's a very important day today. Mark Carney is now in a majority government meeting. No more election until 2029. So it's also a blow to Pierre Poilievre, because it kind of removes all the pressure that he can say, in terms of his leadership, that he needs to stay in power because an election can happen anytime. Now there's actually 3 years now if the Conservative Party wants to reorganize themselves. So it's also a tough day, because Mark Carney also, as his first day in terms of a majority government, took another promise from the Conservative by announcing the gas tax and the removing of the federal gas tax. So again, it's a big blow to the Conservative, not only seeing that they don't have the balance of power anymore, but again, the threat of an election is no more in the card in terms of the Conservative trying to say, there's a sentiment of urgency, and for Pierre Poilievre's leadership, it's also another blow.
I don't know if you heard this question that came up during just after his statement today, right? He took questions the Prime Minister did from the press, and I want you to hear, this was one of them. I think a lot of people did not see this one coming.
If you were Mr. Poilievre, would you quit today?
I don't. That's an unfair question. I can't look into the heart of Mr. Poilievre. I respect him as a parliamentarian, as I do the other leaders of the other parties, and we'll continue. I'll continue to work with him and all parliamentarians, as will my colleagues, to advance the interests of Canadians.
Okay. Question. I mean, obviously, Mark Carney wasn't going to answer that in any kind of interesting fashion. But this also follows up the clip from Pierre Poilievre, where he actually says Mark Carney got a bad education, and talking about the economy, which I think made a lot of people wonder, okay, is Pierre Poilievre, is he, is this sort of best before date after? I mean, is it done?
I don't think it's done, but I just don't, if I was still an advisor to a Conservative leader, I wouldn't not advise to attack Mark Carney when it comes to his education, or the fact that obviously he was a former governor of the Bank of Canada. There's a lot of things you can criticize Mr. Carney in terms of he has promised a lot, he hasn't delivered, but for the moment, he's still also, in terms of just the gas tax, the announcement today, he's taking another page when it comes to the Conservative playbook. And when you look at the results, Canadians still trust Mr. Carney. The honeymoon is continuing. And yes, I don't think it's a good strategy for M. Poilievre or for the Conservative to go after the academic record of Pierre Poilievre, because as we saw yesterday in the polls, Canadians still trust Mr. Carney when it comes to the economy.
Rudy, what happens next for Pierre Poilievre?
But look, it's a question that the only ally that Mr. Poilievre has right now is time, and to basically wait for Mr. Carney to make a mistake or just not delivering, because again, the fact that he has promised a lot, that he hasn't delivered yet, we're still waiting. Is there going to be a pipeline? What is going to happen with those negotiations with the United States? Are there going to be some sectors that are going to be sacrificed? And I'm talking about obviously softwood lumber or aluminum in Quebec, or even what's going to happen in Ontario when it comes to auto workers. So for the moment, the Conservative and Mr. Poilievre need to kind of wait and see for Mr. Carney to make mistakes. But at the same time, Prime Minister Carney is very smart. He doesn't go in the news very often. He kind of has this demeanor of not trying to, always be in everyone's face. So I do believe that it's a very smart strategy, because at the end of the day, he kind of not has too much media exposure, which, by the way, was a mistake I think that Justin Trudeau did when he was Prime Minister. Sometimes when you're Prime Minister, you only go out when you have something to say and not trying to generate coverage every single day.
So let me shift, Rudy, if I can, to what's happening provincially. Christine Frechette, of course, is the new premier. She took some questions today. There were no announcements from her. She says they're coming. We thought there might be some today. There were not. But then at one point, I found this interesting. Someone asked, well, take a listen to this. This is the question about how she's different from François Legault.
I think I have my own style, my own personality. Right from there, you can have a different style that is being seen by Quebecers. My decisions will not be the same, I suppose, but it is to Quebecers to decide what is the exact nature of the change I'm bringing. I'm from another generation, Generation X. I'm a woman. We haven't had so many women, only before. We had Pauline Marois, and this comes with a certain number of change for Quebecers, but for them to decide.
Without saying what those changes are, and the fact that she took some time to explain that she's a Gen Xer, in other words, younger generation. I don't know. What do you think about that?
But it's very interesting because right now, if you look at all the leaders of political parties in Quebec, there's kind of a change of generation.
Right.
I mean, François Legault was the last boomer to be in politics. You can see Charles Milliard is, I believe, 48 years old. Madame Fréchette is about 56 or 57. Same with Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, who's I think 47 or 48. So it's interesting because, yes, it's going to be a new generation now in power, and we'll see what happens in October. It's also a woman. Today, Premier Legault did praise Madame Fréchette, saying that she's a quick learner, that she's smart, but she's going to have some very difficulties because how is she going to show that there's a change without actually changing too much? Because at the end of the day, she needs to keep the unity of the party. Don't forget that her name is coalition, meaning there's people from different stripes inside that coalition. And at the same time, she needs to have a new cabinet. Who is she going to put, for example, as cabinet ministers? We think that, for example, she's going to keep Éric Girard as finance minister. If you keep the same finance minister, it's not also a message that you're changing things. And the big question, what is she going to do with Bernard Drinville? Which position is she going to give Bernard Drinville? Because she cannot put him as education minister. He was already a education minister. She cannot put him, for example, as a health minister. She cannot put him at environment. He was already an environmental minister. And she wants to keep, I believe, the economy for herself. That's her branding. That's the narrative that she's trying to send to Quebecers, that she's a person, that the economy is important for her. So she's going to have some very, very tough decision in the upcoming week in terms of who's going to be her cabinet.
So, Rudy, I have Charles Milliard coming up in about 15 minutes. We're going to be talking to him. He's now looking at a different sort of table, if you will, with a new leader at the CAQ. What does this change for him? What do you think he has to do here?
It's going to be very difficult for him because if you look at Charles Milliard's profile and you look at Christine Fréchette's profile, they have kind of the same experience in terms of they were both head of Chamber of Commerce in Quebec, and they kind of had that demeanor of being more, soft-spoken and taking time to make decisions. And we can see it. Charles Milliard, he's been a leader for a couple of months, but he hasn't put a lot of issues before Quebecers. He's kind of taking his time. Same with Madame Fréchette, where we kind of have this image. So it's going to be very difficult. And then on Saturday morning, there was a very interesting poll from Léger saying that if Madame Fréchette becomes premier, she can steal a lot of votes from the Liberals. So I don't think that it's actually a very good news for the PLQ of having Madame Fréchette. I'm sure they would have preferred to have Bernard Drinville. There's kind of a more wedge between Bernard Drinville and, for example, Charles Milliard. When it comes to Madame Fréchette, I think that now she's going to try to have the message of the economy, which is the message that Charles Milliard is trying to regain and to put forward. So it's going to be difficult. What is going to be the difference now between Charles Milliard and Christine Fréchette? It's going to be a very, very interesting time to see because they need to kind of have a wedge because otherwise people are not going to change their vote.
All right, Rudy, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Canadian women are looking for more out of themselves, their businesses, their elected leaders, and the world around them.
And that's why we're thrilled to introduce the Honest Talk podcast.
I'm Jennifer Stewart.
And I'm Catherine Clark. And in this podcast, we interview Canada's most inspiring women.
Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, politicians, and newsmakers, all at different stages of their journey.
So if you're looking to connect, then we hope you'll join us.
Listen to the Honest Talk podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts.